Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and people. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. Now, I'm joined by a special guest. Everyone's a special guest, but this to me is quite a moment. I'm joined by former General President of my great beloved fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Brother Darryl Matthews. Now, just in general, as you know, with this podcast, I reach out to people that I want to connect with, and sometimes they say, yeah. And so I was quite surprised that this gentleman was pleased to join me on this podcast, but I've been following him on LinkedIn. We've been connected, and it's just great to learn from leaders. Just even not even connecting with him, I knew that he had a spirit that was kindred to me, and I just wanted to have him on the podcast to learn from his experience of being a national leader. But before we get into this episode, Brother Darryl Matthews, can you give the listeners a brief introduction about yourself?
Well, thank you, Phil. I'm humbled and flattered that you asked me. And I'll say this before I get started. The fact that you reached out, most people will not. They won't even take the chance. And that's a leadership quality. You have to be willing to take the leap, to take the risk. So thank you for your invitation. As we spoke previously, I'm the oldest son of three siblings, two younger sisters. My father was military. And believe you me, growing up in his house was akin to being in basic training. Everything had its place, and if you put everything in its place, it'll be there when you look for it. So I learned organizational skills from watching him, from listening to him, from osmosis, just absorbing. I was blessed to live abroad in Germany for a few years. We moved around to a few military bases. So I learned to always have a bag packed, to be ready to go at a moment's notice. And as a leader, you never know when you're going to get a call to be somewhere. And you've got to, when the call comes, you've got to be prepared. So we moved back here from Germany. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. He was an advisor for STRATCOM, Strategic Communications, in Fort Leavenworth. I went to high school in Kansas City. I started my college days in Kansas City, and I finished at the University of Central Missouri. At that time, it was called Central Missouri State, which is 5 miles outside of Whiteman Air Force Base. So I grew up in a somewhat middle-class Black community. And my father was a good man, but he was in the Army uniform all his life. Even when he retired from the military, he taught ROTC for another 20 years. So I realized he was a good man, but where I wanted to go in my life and what I wanted to do, I needed some other role models. And so eventually I ended up pledging our great fraternity and really having an opportunity, because I had no brothers. I had male cousins, and we were good, but I had no brothers, no close connections, other than with my cousins. So I ended up pledging the fraternity, and that's a whole nother story, probably for another podcast. But I couldn't believe that when I was invited to the smoker, as we called him back then, the individual who invited me, a brother named James Retrice, we worked together at Sears Retail Loading Dock. And when he invited me, I couldn't believe that, I had seen him pledge. I didn't know what he was doing, but I saw a transformation in his spirit. And I said, James, do you think I could make it? He looked at me in all sincerity. And James was a person of generous personality and frivolity. He laughed at my jokes a lot, which is not a good thing always. And he said, of course, I think you could make it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have invited you. And that was to have someone in your peer group to express that kind of confidence in your abilities. It made an impression and an impact. One, to this day, I pledged. It was 5 of us on the line. I was the youngest one in the group, and I was the one that was predicted by our pledge group to be that I would be the first one to drop out. And I ended up being the only one to go over because I can't let James down. Here's a man who's expressed confidence in my ability. And needless to say, also growing up, my father provided me with a couple of field manuals. We called them FM dash, whatever the nomenclature. And one was on military leadership. And another book he provided me with was on military officers training. And the key elements in there were, to be a leader, you've got to look like you're the leader. You got to look like you're in charge. And people all around you may be running around in circles, but they will gravitate toward the person who looks like they're in control. Even if you aren't, you got to look like you are so that you can bring order to the group. And I learned a lot of that during pledging the fraternity. I learned to be real with myself, to not accept excuses, because a lot of times we will give ourselves. So I'm going on and on, but that's my life, and that's how I got started in developing leadership skills. It started with my father providing me with military manuals and saying poems, different poems to me in the morning when we would share our same mirror to, getting ready for him for work, me for school. And I don't think fathers or male role models sometimes realize just the simple things they say, both positive and negative, the impact that those things have on young people, male and female, but especially young men that you take into your circle to groom or to mentor.
I mean, that was great. That was great. I was going to just let you keep going because I'm just smiling and taking this in. And a lot of things were transparent to me was that my father was 30 years in the military. And so I had that same mindset where that shaped what I thought a leader looked like.
Yes.
But it was also not the call for me,
Right.
My father went to VMI. I think my father has been in a uniform since he was age 6, from Boy Scouts on. And so, his life has been regimented and all that. But then that wasn't the path for me. So some of the questions, one question I had was that as I've even taken this Alpha Leadership Academy, I think the only leader that I saw envisioned to my mind was a military one, like a very authoritative. And that was the style of a leader that I looked at. And then when I thought, well, I'm not very authoritative myself, I don't particularly like bossing people around. But then over time, people have called me a leader. And then I realized, oh, there's different styles. Like,
right.
My style is different than my father's style. Like he was a leader. Like I saw him command thousands of people and people salute him. And when he talked, everyone was quiet. And I'm more like, when I talk, I like to ask questions, like it's more of a dialogue. So in particular to you, how do you realize that maybe your leadership style was a little bit different than your father's, right?
Right.
You are a renowned leader. I like to believe I've seen you talk to people that you do have order, but you're not as what consider a very authoritative leader, more of a different collaborative leader. So can you explain how you started to develop your own style of leadership?
Sure. So again, it goes back to something my father told me early in my life. He said, if you can lead men into combat, people who are willing to die, with you, for you, behind you, then you can lead anybody to do anything. And it's a matter of, he said, I've seen officers who were afraid to be out in combat with their troops because they didn't know which way the bullet was going to come. Well, that's not a person who's a leader. That's a person with a title. A leader doesn't need a title. A leader is the person that the people get behind. I have been in job situations where I didn't have the title. I didn't have the authority, but people who outranked me would come to me to find out what I thought about a situation or to run something by me to get my perspective, because they knew I had the hearts of the people. If you were to go back, and I say this modestly, on social media, I have former staff members who will reply or respond to something I post and say, you're the best boss I ever had. And so I started telling people that when they came to work for me, I'll be the best boss you ever had if you listen to what I'm telling you, because I've done this before and I've been successful. Those who don't listen to me, we're going to miss you. But those who do, we're going to succeed together and we're going to prosper together. But my father also told me that he had done my time and his time. I was headed down that military path. I was in ROTC, in high school, junior ROTC. And he let me know in no uncertain terms, I've done your time and my time. Of course, he was just coming back from Vietnam. He was in Vietnam, I think, my freshman, sophomore years in high school, or maybe ninth grade. Yeah, freshman, 8th and 9th grade. But anyway, anybody can bark orders, but I don't want somebody to do something because I said you better do it, or you got to do it. I want people to know, I want to collaborate. And I feel like, looking at me, how I feel, if I know what the mission is, if you share the details with me, I'm more inclined to go above and beyond, because I want to make sure you're successful as the leader, because it's a team effort. We all are going to be successful. There are some people, so-called leaders, who forget that it's not just about them. And I think anyone that saw me as general president of fraternity will tell you that I always started off with, it's not about me, because it never is about you as the leader. It's about us as the team. And you commit to the team, because success is the team's. Now, I've worked for some leaders who say, well, success is mine, failure belongs to the staff.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah, and those, again, I sleep well at night when the burden of the staff of the team is on my shoulders as the leader. But when I look back and say, did I do the right thing by my team? Even if I have to sacrifice my position, that's what it's all about, leaving that legacy and trying to groom. In every organization I've ever run, I tell my staff, my team, my job is to prepare you to run your organization. I don't expect you to be here 40 years. We're not prepared to just hold you and give you a go watch in 40 years. If you aren't, after a few years, ready to go out and run your organization or take over your own, then I have failed as the leader. So I'm always supposed to be grooming that next set of leaders.
I love that. I mean, it also follows up. So here's, I think, 2 follow-up questions that come to mind is, one, how do you know when you have the heart of the people? Like, how do you know, like, when it clicks, like, I got someone that can, run through a brick wall for me? How do you know you had that moment? That's one question. And then the other one was, when you're leading someone, obviously you're grooming them. Do you have, like, as I work with students, I work in a college. I know certain students, and I don't want to sound very dismissive, but I know ones where I was like, yo, this person's taking my advice. They got it. They're gonna be rock stars. They're gonna surpass me. Like, they have this, like, core innate, I don't know, like, they listen well. They just take what you say to the next level. I can start to spot it now. So how do you have that kind of mindset too, like, in regards to grooming someone or coaching them? You're like, this one has the it, whatever the it is, and not to say someone doesn't, but, like, maybe this person is I don't have their heart either. You know what I'm saying? I don't have it.
Right. So, okay, your first question was, remind me again, because I was focused on the second one.
Yeah. How do you know you have the heart of the people? Like, how do you know you got them, or they're going to run through a brick wall for you?
You will know because you will see it. you will see the person who's constantly demonstrating initiative. You'll see the person who is standing up. Yeah, you don't have to worry. There's certain people you don't have to worry about. Are they doing what they're doing, or are they doing the right thing? Because you will see it. And your job is to encourage them. But your job is also to encourage those that the light bulb hasn't come on for yet. You know, I was that person in your class in college that was still trying to find my way. And we all have those eureka moments. And if we're lucky, we have several of them. I can give you one in particular. On Saturday mornings, you know, I worked retail, and sometimes during college, I had a couple of jobs while I was going to school. And because my father had come to me as a young man and said, look, we're standing in the mirror shaving one day, and we're both sharing it because in my house, the best of everything belonged to the women. So the bathroom upstairs was the ladies' bathroom, and we got this little roughed out cubby hole in the basement with a shower, you know, that we share. And he said, and he wasn't mad. He said, you know, the law doesn't require me to take care of you past the age of 17 when you graduate from high school. So whichever comes first, don't let the sun come up the next day and find you in my house. So then later he relented and said, later on in the subsequent conversation, he said, you know, as long as you're in school, he said, I can't afford to pay for your college, and I don't owe that to you. Now, if you want it, you go get it. I'll allow you to live in my house as long as you're in school. You know, and I don't know if that was a challenge to me to see if I could do it, because my father and I have also had a little competition going on inadvertently. I found out he wanted to be a veterinarian, but he couldn't get past chemistry. I was a B+ student in chemistry, and I didn't do anything with that. But, you know, my father had pledged to fraternity in college, but he didn't finish because he was a non-traditional student. He had been in the Army for a hitch, and he found that some of the pledging antics were just pedantic to him, were childish. And I digress for a moment, if you'll indulge.
Yeah.
He also had a car, and he was in a state university in the middle of Kansas. And the big brothers didn't want him to bring his car on campus because they wanted the president of the fraternity, not our fraternity, to be the only one to have, the only black student to have a car on campus. And so that was and they wanted you to carry a paddle on Wednesdays. And when you ran across a big brother on the campus, you had to submit to paddling. So again, he's a little older. He's been to the Army. He's, you know, this is not for him.
No.
And so I went on to school. I like I said, I pledged to fraternity. I B+ in chemistry. You know, and so we've had our challenges, but I thought maybe he doesn't think that I can get a college degree without his help. I'll show him. And I did. And I didn't need student loans to do it. You know, of course, back in those days, college was affordable enough. I started at community college, you know, and my first 2 years were really very low cost. But going back to your other question, how do you know? You can tell, but you also, there's some people that, you know, you can't save everybody.
Yeah.
There are people that, you know, I give them my speech, my introductory speech. And those who get on my page, you know, we go down to the dock and they get on the boat and we go out and we sell out and do great things. There's some we have to leave on the dock. You know, we tell them, you know, it's up to you. If you get on my page, we're going to all do well together. If you don't, then I'm going to miss you. We're going to miss you.
Yeah.
You know, so, but don't give up on the ones that are a little bit slower to take. They'll give up on themselves and they'll weed themselves out. So I used to commute to school in my last 2 years, about 65 miles away from my home base. And on Saturday mornings was my morning to sleep late and lay in the bed for a couple of hours and to think. Of course, I did a lot of thinking while I was driving. So I had to drive 65 miles at least 3-4 days one way a week. So I didn't take any classes that didn't occur after 12 noon.
Yeah.
I
No
needed to
8
be
a.m.
through
for
by
you.
12 noon so I could get on the highway and go to my job. And then I come back, the store closed at 9, 10 o'clock. And then we had 30 minutes of cleaning up, straightening it up. Then I get back on the highway and get back to school, back to the campus by 12 midnight, study till 2, and then up in the morning, back at it. But I was dedicated to accomplishing my mission, but one morning I'm laying in bed listening to a song by Earth, Wind and Fire. And I remember they get to the part about, it's a little rap in there. And they talked about beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I should remember that song is on the tip of my tongue. And maybe it's all about love. But the words were, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. If there ain't no beauty, you got to make some beauty. Lord have mercy. So that said to me, what I think as a leader projects outward. People will see your glow if you have a glow, if you think it. And so I used to tell the brothers, and they'll tell you that back in undergrad, some groups would come we'd have these parties on campus, and some groups would come in together shouting, announcing their arrival, yo, and just being boisterous. I would suggest to the brothers, look, when we walk into the party, we're not going to announce ourselves. We are going to project ourselves, and people will feel, and they will feel you. If you're transparent, you're fully transparent, and you project, you walk in with pride, you change the atmosphere of the room when you walk in, because they see, they can project, you project those traits. And I'm gonna go back to another thing you mentioned about being in uniform, what have you. That's another thing I learned about military leadership. Is I used to look at my father in his uniform, and he walked erect. He walked with a swagger. He had something called a garrison line, which I'm sure you're familiar with, where the seam of your shirt runs down is even with the seam with the buckle of your pants.
Yeah, my dad did that.
Those are things that people look at when you don't know it. I had a reputation when I went to corporate America. I had the shiniest shoes because I was spit shining from my ROTC days.
Yeah.
But people used to come up to me and look at my shoes and look down at my shoes, look at theirs, and kind of rub them on the back of their pants. I wasn't trying to make anybody feel bad. I was projecting my image. And that was, when you see me, know that you're not talking to just anybody. You're talking to somebody who's got pride in their appearance, who wants to get the job done and will not be denied my opportunities. Now, everything wasn't perfect in that flow, but when I do the best that I can do with who I am, other people will naturally either attend to you as an example, or they will hate. And there are a lot of haters out there. And the haters have also motivated me and inspired me to be, more of who I am. Some will come around. Haters and friends are both temporary conditions in our life.
You're preaching.
So I hope I've answered. You
did. No, you did beautifully. And one of the things, obviously in this conversation, you say like the questions come as you talk. It was that projection. I can totally attest to it. This is the first time we met, seeing each other face to face. But just in general, that next layer of social media, you've always, to me, projected an image of class and distinction. And as you said, people come to you. I was just full transparency, just drawn to you through social media, like that projection, like the image, the avatar was clean. The way that every single time I saw you, even in virtual rooms, such as the Alpha Leadership Academy, the way you spoke and took command, you took command of a Zoom room, that projected that. And I was like, man, I need to connect with you. I needed to reach out to you which we're doing now. So I do agree. It's like, wow, that projection is real. Like even in a virtual space, it's real. Like the way you command a room is virtual. So one of my things about that projection, I'm thinking about that, like everyone is their own brand, right? And how we project that image. Obviously the image of alpha is men of distinction, class, scholarship.
Yes.
But we also can, trickle down to your own individual brand. For me, mine is one of, positivity, kindness, compassion, right? So if you were to say your projection, right, when you walk in a room, what is the brand, quote unquote, that Brother Darryl Matthews tried to project to the world, whether that's in a virtual space or in a real room? What is your projection? What do you try to you think about it? Like, I think like for me, if I want to project myself as a positive person, that means like I'm very conscious of like, my negative attitude. I'm very, even in challenges, I don't like throw shade at people because I'm like, if my brand is positive, I understand that some of my actions reflect that. They're gonna be like, Philip's talking about being a positive person, but his actions, his way that he walks in a room, the way that he talks to people is very contradictory to that brand. So I'm very cognizant of that. So what would be the things that you like to say, like, I project myself as Brother Darryl Matthews?
Well, I try to project an uplifting spirit that, you see a lot of this on social media, people casting shade, down. Look, blowing out somebody else's candle doesn't make yours shine any brighter. So as they say in the Gospels, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. So if I can be a light for the world, or a light to those around me, or a light for me and my family, I want you to feel better because you engaged with me. People who have low self-confidence, low self-esteem, they feel intimidated by that, and they turn that inward into resentment and to hate. I can't tell you the number of people who have said to me, why didn't we speak like this before? Or I didn't really know you, and I didn't like you when I first met you. I said, that's because you didn't know me. You didn't reach out. I'm here. And so I also try to give to the extent that I can. Now, there's some people who are takers, and they have no limits, and they will take to the nth degree. But I had no reason, for instance, you reached out to me, I had no reason to not respond. If I'm to make this world a better world, and I grew up in an age where we were talking about revolution, and we were talking about changing and uplift and positive uplift and positive black male role models, because the black male takes such a beating in the media, and sometimes from our own people, and sometimes people who don't really have, again, that high self-esteem or sufficient self-esteem. And so they cast themselves as ne'er-do-wells and fools. And so I don't have time for that foolishness. There are certain movies that I won't even bother with. I won't knock them because everybody's got to get paid. But they don't feed my spirit. So I also look to associate and acquaint myself with people. In the Bible, it talks about as iron sharpens iron. So some of the interaction between brothers is what do you call it? Not irritating, but
toxic.
Say again.
Toxic.
Not quite. There's some that's toxic, but we don't always have to all be on one accord and the same page. There is room for discussion, room for
diversity of thought
and argument. But as long as at the end of it we realize this wasn't personal, this was a sharing of beliefs and an opportunity to discuss our situation. It's a little irritation there, sort of like the irritation between alumni brothers and college brothers.
Yeah.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
Because we learn so much from our younger brothers because they bring newer perspectives. But by the same token, we have some keys that will help them walk down that road.
Yeah.
And so they need to be as a young brother coming along, I was at every alumni meeting, and I wasn't even a member of the alumni chapter because I wanted to sit there and observe men who have been where I'm trying to go. So we can never be so full of ourselves that we can't learn from somebody above us, or I'll say below us, but at every level. So always, continuous improvement, CI, always be in a mode of being willing to listen and learn. And you don't have to agree with what you hear, but you can understand that people have different perspectives. It can help you focus and sharpen your argument as to why you believe what you believe. So, this term is going to bother me that I can't remember because I just heard Milton Davis use it in the conversation we had not too long ago. But it has to do with, when you talk about iron sharpens iron, it's because we push one another, we challenge one another. And out of that, we become better men, better people. But my brand is, when you look at me, I want you to feel like everything is possible because I didn't have a silver spoon. Nothing was handed to me. Now, there are people who've had a much harder upbringing than me and have done much better than I have. And that's to be expected. I've seen young brothers come into the fraternity after me, years after me, tell me that I am their mentor. They look up to me, and they have far surpassed me in the world. But that's what this is all about. That's another way of measuring my success, is to see what the young men who have come behind me, who have looked up to me, and if I'm going to leave them with a negative feeling, a negative situation, I'm not going to respond, then I haven't contributed to their growth. Then I haven't done my job. What do they say? Service is the rent you pay for the space you occupy on earth. My job is to help uplift downtrodden humanity in any way I can. It doesn't mean going into the checkbook always, giving. Sometimes the best advice that I've received was worth more than gold. The good advice I've received. And sometimes the bad advice I've received is because I can realize, that's not, that's not for me. That's not my path. And we all got to seek our own path.
I love it. I was about to say, add me to the list of brothers that look up to you and ones. So if you got a running count, just add Philip Wilkerson to that list. One thing I was thinking about too is when I look at you is scalability of leadership. Starting at the community level and then the regional level and then national level. And if in your experience, does it feel different as you scale up? Does it feel harder to wrangle people in or corral people as you get larger or a larger audience? And just particularly anything, like you can talk about whether scaling up in your normal work endeavors or in your service through the fraternity. Does it feel different? Because I would say to me, I'm getting more involved, right? And I'm realizing the world is bigger than my backyard in regards to professional organizations, for instance. So I work in career services at George Mason University, and now I'm getting involved in a little like professional organizations, like the Eastern Region Career Centers. And then I'll be totally transparent. The national level is a little too intimidating for me. I don't like going to the national conferences. I don't really, you go to these big rooms, you don't connect. So I like to say that I'm like regional and below, call me a Virginia Alpha. You know what I'm saying? Like I went to the nationals in Vegas, and for me, it was too large for me. I got a little like small fish in a giant ocean. I was like, I don't think I want to be involved in anything national level. It was too much. But I love the Virginia level. I love the regional level. I don't know. Just speak to that for yourself about that scaling up and that experience.
An interesting point for me to make. So I mentioned to you, and during the time that I came along, we were talking about revolution. We were talking about leadership and, developing the community, leading the community. And my father always preached. One of the things he preached to me when I was maybe 7 years old, 6 or 7. He bought a tape recorder in Germany, a Grundig tape recorder. And he used to have me on this tape recorder. It was a reel-to-reel, just constantly clowning, speaking, doing comedic routines. Jerry Lewis, he would buy these comedy albums from the PX. And he said, people who speak and learn to articulate their thoughts will always be the leader, and everyone else will follow them. So I have worked on trying to master getting my thoughts out, not coming across as a stuffy academician, and there's a role for them and there's a place for them, but to talk to the people in a common way without putting them down and making them feel lesser, but to uplift them. Now, you mentioned going to the conventions. I got stair-stepped into leadership roles. And I'm going to tell you, Phil, one of the things that for all that I've been able to do, and I don't regret any of it, but in the beginning, I was just having fun being a brother, going to chapter meetings. And that's what I miss a lot, because once you start up that staircase, up that ladder, you are perceived differently, you are treated differently, and you miss out a lot on the brotherliness of it, because everybody now wants to say, oh, well, that's past General President Matthews, and you're in a goldfish bowl. And so people have a hard time, taking you when you let your hair down, where you can go. And that's one of the things, again, that digress for a bit. We have a lot of preachers in the fraternity. And I've been blessed to be in their company backstage, because they need to let off too, because that's some hard work. You're talking about leadership and ministering to your flock. Yeah. And it's pretty much, as a leader, you have a flock that you minister to. People come and go. You can't always worry about the ones that leave, but you leave the door open for them to return. But once I started, and I remember in college, I was the first president when we started organizing the states into what's now called districts.
Yep.
The state of Missouri organized, and as a college brother, I was the first president of the state of Missouri, which now most of the districts, alumni brothers run and manage them, and that's been some of that.
But then have a college brother system like college and.
Right. Well, that's been more recent.
Okay, gotcha.
Wasn't always the case, because college brothers, to their betterment, have had to fight for a lot of their recognition and rights, and that's what part of this is. Salmon swimming upstream. If as one of my mentors told me, if you, as a college brother, he said, Darryl, if you see something and you feel like it's wrong, you have a responsibility to get up to the mic and address it.
Yeah.
And I tell you that a lot of times brothers get up to the mic and they're not prepared. And being an alpha is a place, it's trial by fire.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a place, you'd be surprised probably, maybe you wouldn't. I didn't start out smooth. And I can tell you that there are a number of times where I stumbled and fell. But as one of the college brothers back in my day said, you see, Darryl comes to these meetings prepared to play the political game. Some brothers have a distaste for it, and that's okay. Some just want to come and enjoy the fellowship and camaraderie. And as I moved up the leadership ladder, I've missed that more and more, because nobody wants to be sitting around talking about stuff with somebody who might take it the wrong way or take it back. In other words, they just trust you in that role. And as I moved up, and brothers started treating me a little different, I said, wait a minute, I'm the same brother that was sitting in the room with you yesterday. Now, why are we having this friction is the word I was looking for, this friction. They said, well, you made yourself a target, so we had to shoot at you. So that's part of the dichotomy about being the leader, because you are the target. So you got to be prepared to take the slings and arrows.
Yeah, I was about to say the burden of leadership. I think the microscope is on you a little bit more. People assume that like you said, they don't see that backstage anymore. So they think that, like you're not a man of the people, or you don't let your
Right.
hair down, which
Or
is
you think that you are.
better than, and all that stuff. And I've, like I said, I've noticed that more and more as, in the more conversations I have with leaders such as yourself, is that I'm starting to take people such as yourself off of pedestals. Now there's still
Right.
a level of respect, a level of deference,
Right.
but then at the same time, I was like, oh, he calls me Philip. He's just calling me Philip. It's this behind the scenes that a lot of people don't get, when they look at their leaders as normal people, because it's hard to know their journey and stuff. But it's
Well, I
still
bet you
intimidating
there's something
as you
that
get
your
bigger.
father has told you many times is, I've had commanding officers myself. This is your father talking, but they put their pants on one leg at a time.
Yeah.
Just like here. And so that's the other thing to realize, that when you see the brother up there on up on the dais or up on the stage or at the lectern, he wakes up with the same fears and concerns you do every morning. But to get, many people don't grow to the position, to the role. But I will say that to do where you want to be is to do what you're doing right now, and that's to serve. You will never become a great leader if you're not a great servant of the people. If you're not a servant of the people, period. And what I told you earlier, it's never been about me. It was always about, what can I do for the group? What can I do for the frat? What can I do for the chapter? How can I help brothers to what can we provide so that there's more of a return on investment for the brothers? Because none of us need to belong to an organization where we just go and get nothing out of it.
Right.
Now, I don't believe that everybody has to be involved in the service roles, that we all take out of this what we need. And if what you need is if what you want to do, because that's how I started out as a brother, going to New York in 1976 was my first national convention. And I went with my chapter brothers, and we went to hang out and have fun. And we met a lot of great brothers. We didn't even go to a session. For the first several years of my fraternal life, the session was in the hallway. The session was in other brothers' rooms. You can have all the workshops in the world that you want at a convention. Nobody holds a workshop on stepping, but brothers go to a convention and they come back with the latest steps, the latest moves. We don't even teach that. They learn the other stuff, the stuff they want to learn. They pick that up, and the stuff that's not always in our best interest, but they pick that up. But when you go and you hand out your card and you collect cards and you just kind of follow up with brothers, you just learn the brotherhood. Just learn the brothers. Just get to know people and see what they're about. Again, that's part of your interest in them as a person, getting to know what drives them, what they're interested in doing. And maybe sometimes a brother will talk about doing something and a spark will touch, go off in you. And you say, well, I know somebody. I know a guy. I know somebody. Do you know so-and-so? And that's how the network gets formed. It's not always deliberate. It just happens by you reaching out, extending the hand of fellowship and brotherhood. And you never know. I've had at least 3 jobs, significant jobs over national organizations in my life, where brothers that I barely knew or didn't really know, but they knew of me, had observed me, reached out, put me in touch with some people, with a guy, with a person, a search firm. And next thing you know, I'm running that organization because a brother of a conversation we had or something he heard about me for something I'm doing. And again, there are other brothers who are just as worthy and well qualified, but they knew me. Again, I mentioned when I was a college brother, I'd go to the alumni chapter meetings all the time. Every year, the brothers would come up. They had $500 book scholarship they wanted to give to a worthy student. So then the discussion around the room is, well, how should we dispose of this? And then some brother would say, well, there's Brother Matthews sitting back there. He comes to all of the meetings. Why don't we give it to Brother Matthews? Yeah, I didn't go there asking for that, but again, I have been so blessed, by putting myself in a position to be of service, and even now, I will go and yeah, if we were sitting in my suite and you came up to the room and brothers all around, Phil, what you drinking? What can I get you? Because I'm never going to be anybody but that brother that I was first. But brothers will hold you up and extol you to high office, to high visibility, if they know that you have their interests at heart. And it's the same with your staff. They got to believe you have their interests at heart, whether they have yours or not. They got to believe that you're their servant leader. And so you just keep doing what you're doing. But don't be intimidated by any of those brothers, because some of them are sitting there looking at you thinking, man, he could take my job. Well, it's none of them are jobs for life. None of us are guaranteed to hold the position we hold forever. We're supposed to be grooming people to take our place and looking for our next level.
I love it. I have one more question. And maybe this is, like I said, giving me advice. How do you know you're ready? Because I have been approached for leadership positions in organizations, like board positions, and I would turn them down. Like maybe I turned them down because I thought bandwidth, like, man, like I don't know if I could take on this and be a good father and whatnot, or two, be totally transparent, even with the listeners and you. I was just kind of scared or intimidated. So how do you know when someone's like, hey, Phil, I think you should be on this? How did you evaluate whether you're ready or not? Like, what are some of your factors? Like, you look at your own
I told
resume
you
or
a
whatever.
story when I was invited to come to the fraternity rush, the smoker. And what did I say? Do you think I can make it?
Yeah.
That was my first and last significant doubt in myself. When my brother James Retrice said, of course I think you can make it, else I wouldn't have invited you. When you
Okay.
get invited, you have, I think, to yourself and to your community, because remember, there are other people with lesser capability than you would jump right on it. Would be willing to go in and sit down and perhaps mess it up. You can't mess it up, and you got to believe that you can't mess it up any worse than anybody else. But more importantly, that you want to add value. So you owe it to yourself and understand your bandwidth is important. I can't
Yeah.
tell you the number of days that I've gotten up at 4 o'clock in the morning to catch a flight to get back home so that I could go to a football game or a soccer game, because the first votes you've got to get are the kitchen and bedroom votes. If the people that are in your kitchen and in your bedroom are not supporting your move, then right, listen, I almost didn't run for general president.
Okay, there you go. Yes.
Because my loving, dutiful wife said to me, you ain't never home now. How you gonna do that?
Yes.
And so,
Okay.
as far as I was concerned, the group of brothers who had approached me, I had
Yeah.
my answer. And so later on, I won't go into all the details, but she came back and she said, all right, I don't want to be the reason why you said you didn't do it.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
said, well, that's hardly a ringing endorsement. And she said to me in her Chicago South Side way, well, you better take what you can get.
Yes, I love it.
So I went back to the committee and I said, brothers, I have permission to run.
Yes. Yep.
And so, because I was fully prepared not to, based on, I have obligations that we have to weigh and we have to measure. So it is what you can't do everything everybody wants you to do, but the fact that they're coming to you asking you, you're ready. You're ready. Your potentiality, your potential is greater than anyone has ever allowed you to believe. Because a lot of people out here is unfortunate, is messed up. They think, well, the more Phil gains, the more he does, the more he advances. That's the further backwards I'm going. There's enough out here for everybody.
Yeah, I love that.
So you never know when that next invitation, that next meeting, is the one that launches you in a whole different direction. As long as you're taking forward steps, forward progress, no backward steps. Sometimes we have to step from side to side.
Yeah.
But that's allowed as long as ultimately you continue moving forward.
I love it. All right, so I did kind of trick you a little bit. I said that that was our last question, but we have my segment of my show, which I like to call Shot for Shot, where you get to ask me any random question that's related or not to this topic, and I get to ask you a random question. So, do you want to go first, or I go first?
I will go first.
Okay, go ahead.
Since you guys all them. So, what is it you want to do, Phil?
Like what, today or tomorrow or next year?
It's an open question.
Okay. So I've been really very targeted, particularly about my vision for myself and what I want to do next. I did like a vision board, and I would say just right now is that I'm fully like happy and find purpose in being an educator in some form or fashion. I want to still stay plugged into education in some form or fashion. It gives me, great purpose to help young people. I like what you said, develop other people. I love the aspect of mentorship. So no matter where I go in life, where, leadership or trajectory, I had to have some kind of pulse in connecting with people and developing other people, particularly people that are younger or, not as advanced as me, to bring them up. That makes me really, really happy. So, in this year, I'm thinking about going back to school. I'm thinking about going back to get a PhD. I'm actively investigating and researching whether that's the next thing with my bandwidth. But what I really want to do, when I close my eyes about legacy, there was a gentleman by the name of Art Dean, and Art Dean worked at JMU. And if you were a Black student, you knew him. He had a pulse and a hand on every Black student at James Madison. And I don't know whether that's at George Mason or in the community, but that's something that I want to be. Like, I want to be the Art Dean of some educational institution where I know that young Black students, I had a pulse, a hand on them, and influence. I don't know what aspect or how that directly looks, but when I look back at my career, if I did something similar where someone years later said, Philip Wilkerson helped me, that makes me feel really good about myself. So what I want to do is I want to educate. I want to develop other people, like you said, develop leaders. And I just want to like leave people better off than when I found them, like because of my presence in their life, they were better off.
Right.
And smarter or more prepared. So that's kind of a big meta one. I don't know. In the very small scheme, I just want to be, for this academic year, I just want to survive it and make sure that students are prepared for this academic year. Working at the Career Center, at least get some kids some jobs and internships so that when they leave college, they get their money's worth and get a job and get employment. That's the very in the present, and then the further down the line is a legacy of that. So,
all right, great.
Oh man, you made me think, but it's quick because that's the reason why it was so quick for me to think about it is I write it down, I journal about it,
right.
And one of my mantras that I say every single day to myself is that I'm blessed, I am enough, I make a difference, I matter. And I say that over and over again. In some aspect, it makes me reflect that I'm blessed today. I make a difference in people's lives. I matter, and I'm enough. Like what I'm doing is enough. Because that's kind of hard. Sometimes you think you're not doing enough. So
leaders always think there's more that they can do.
Yeah.
We challenge ourselves.
So my last question for the shot for shot is that you've lived all over the country, and you've done national level stuff. One of my things I want to ask is what has been your right now at this current moment, because you still have way more to go, what has been one of your like career accomplishments that you were just like, I did it, like this is something I really could put my legacy on. This is a accomplishment. And I know you're saying that you're doing it for others, but this is not about others. I'm talking about you did it for yourself too, that like this is my accomplishment. I'm really proud of this.
Geez, Phil, there are some. I wake up every day just feeling. I've had so many great moments. My first big accomplishment to me was to graduate from college with a bachelor's of science degree. Now, I wanted to go to law school, but I graduated from college without any debt.
Yeah.
Wish I'd have been a little smarter about what to do with what that time was money that, that I was living like young people, you living on disposable income instead of understanding the value of putting it up. But getting that degree was major for me because I could truly say at the end of it, I didn't know anybody anything. I thank my father, but I didn't even stay in his house the whole time. I mean, I think I left a couple of years, prior to getting my degree. But that was the first thing, because I also felt that I get my degree, and then I can go and define who I want to be or what I want to do. But the first step, because one of the things I didn't tell you was, so while I was working retail, I worked for a grocery store, a grocery company, a retailer called A&P, the great A&P, Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company. And was making pretty good money. We had a union in Kansas City. We were the highest paid retail clerks in the nation because of some of the forces that our union was affiliated with. And so when I graduated, I thought they offered me, before I graduated, they offered me an opportunity to join their management development. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, companies had been segregating their hiring practices. They weren't hiring Black professionals, minorities, and women in these roles. So they were creating these MDIP programs, management development programs. And I was offered the job to come in, or offered the opportunity to come into management with them, with the caveat that I would have to quit school, leave school. And I think I was in my junior year of college at the time, right away. And the pay was fantastic. But my thought was, you can hire any monkey to come in here and run these cash registers. It's better to have my degree and don't need it than to need it and don't have it. And so I stayed on and finished school. And a few years afterwards, because we were such high paid clerks and our union was so powerful, many of the large chains, including A&P, left the Kansas City area. And a lot of independent grocers came in, and they didn't have the same collective bargaining agreement with the union, and the wages were not the same. So I kind of dodged the bullet there. But the important point for me was I had accomplished my degree and had exhibited some leadership skills and traits in extracurricular activities. Most of it was public service activities, political, civic, social. But getting that degree and accomplishing those, again, being the first president of the state of Missouri for the Alphas. And it's just been a number of things that, and it hasn't all been sunshine and flowers. There's a lot of heartbreaks and disappointments, but, again, just keep moving forward. One of the things, though, that again, sometimes it's better to be lucky than smart. I was in a position to be the president of the fraternity, the general president, during its 100th year celebration, its centennial in 2006.
Yeah.
And to be involved, be the vice chair, ultimately, of the committee that built the Martin Luther King, of the board, vice chair of the board that built the Martin Luther King Memorial Foundation in Washington. because I had seen that from its inception, working in the general office of the fraternity. And to see it from concept to, just confusion and chaos to ultimately we put it in the ground. And a lot of people didn't believe, including some of our own members, that we could do it. I never had any doubt that we would do it. But I also was fortunate because I never thought that I'd be sitting in the chair when we had the groundbreaking, or that I'd be invited back to the actual unveiling of the memorial. I mean, to me, that was a big accomplishment, that Providence and the grace of God put me in positions where I could be that. And all I wanted to do was just serve this great fraternity and serve these brothers in any way I could. And I never thought about the rewards that would come to me, just servant leadership. If you serve, you will probably be rewarded amply, many times over than what you ever anticipated. But don't do it to be rewarded. Do it because service is the rent we pay for the space and time we occupy on earth. And we do it for the greater good. They say a rising tide lifts all boats. You'd like to, know that you help uplift downtrodden humanity, is in the preamble of our Constitution.
Yes.
So I that first step for me was getting my degree, because my father let me know that he was unable to provide the resources and was unable to, based on his credit, or unwilling to sign on to student loans. And so I did it the old-fashioned way. I worked and went to school and studied, and I didn't come out, magna cum, summa cum laude, but I did come out. Thank you, Lottie.
Yeah, I was about to say you came out. Thank you, Lordy. I used to say that too. And it's funny too, the transference. I worked at a grocery store while I was in college. I worked at Food Lion, so like there we go. So you never know.
That was one of the biggest lessons. That's where I learned my most incredible lesson of life and personal development, is how to serve the public, because they come at you and they're not always right, but they've been told that they're right, and we have to treat them like they're right. And when you learn to deal with this, I'll call them crazy public.
Yes.
You are preparing yourself for leadership as well, because you're going to find and meet people in your team and your staff that have these notions, and you got to be prepared for that diversity of thought and how to channel it, how to help people reach, because I was not the best employee when I started. And fortunately, I had managers. I'm thinking of a guy by the name of Thad Lawrence, who just, grabbed me by the lapels basically and said, Darryl, look, I need you to focus on this. I need you to do this. I need you to do this. And if you can't do it, then I don't need you. Yeah. Well, he could have just kicked me on out the door, as many probably would have the first time I screwed up something, but he didn't. So that's another lesson I learned, is that, you should always be willing to give a person more than one chance, and sometimes be the supervisor of second chance opportunities, the manager, the team leader for second chances, because I was not that perfect employee. I've come a long way because, again, the friction that I've had with good people who saw something when I didn't see it in me, and gave me that chance, gave me that shot. So
I love it. So this has been great. This really filled me up. I definitely think we could do another part, man. The wisdom that you shared has really inspired me. As you can see, I was taking notes. I tell everyone, all my guests, this podcast is great for other people, but this is also almost like an audio recording of me, lessons I learned. So I learned so many lessons from you today.
So Phil, I want to show you something. You see this? Can you see that?
Yeah.
This is volume 3 of my journal. Hold on just a minute. Something just jumped up. This is my journal. I do the same thing. The whole time that I was general president, when I worked in city of Atlanta, everywhere I've gone, I've kept a journal, just jotting down notes and everything. That's important. Leaders are organized and they think outside. It's a cliche. They think outside the box. So I see in you what you probably don't see. in yourself right now. So don't hesitate. Don't be afraid to take that leap, to walk out there on that plank, because you'll be all right.
Yes. I hope
You will
so.
be all right.
Yeah. And I need that. I got that same thing too. I got the wife pass. So, if she gives me the green light, that's what I need too.
Well,
So,
that's the other thing that has helped me to that the bounce back, the feedback. There have been some times when I didn't know what else. I reach a dead end, and the wife comes in, and they're unvarnished. They don't hold back. They tell you about yourself. They're completely transparent. Now they won't do that with the kids. The kids get unconditional love. You don't have that luxury, but
no.
we get the unvarnished truth, and she has helped me. Uh, she's also cost me from time to time, but she said, "Well, you knew I was expensive when you met me." So, matter of fact, and I digress for a bit of humor. She has told me about division of labor. Her job is generating expenses, and my job is generating revenues. And she does her job better than I do mine. So that's another motivating force, that you got to keep up. You got to step up your game.
I
Always be
love it.
looking to step up your game.
I love it. I love it. So this is the part of the show where I call it shout outs and plugs. So you can show love to anyone that you want to show love to, any shout outs you want to give. And then plugs or anywhere where you would feel comfortable for the listeners to follow up with you or things that you're working on. So, as we conclude this
Sure.
episode, shout outs and plugs, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, there's so many shout outs that I could give. I want to shout out James Retrice, the brother that I worked with at the Sears retail loading dock when I was an undergrad, that invited me to. I had a cousin who was an alpha. I didn't really know much about black fraternities except what I'd seen about fraternities in general on television. And I remember my cousin Curtis Rogers was pledging, and he used to come over and visit with my family on Sundays, and he'd have his little Sphinxman's manual with him. I want to give a shout out to a brother who is deceased, Jimmy Buford, who was my political mentor in Kansas City. He's the one that told me, Darryl, when you get on the floor of the convention, there are no college brother ideas. There are no alumni brother ideas. There are no life member ideas. They're all alpha ideas, and they're either valid or they're not valid. Or they're good or they're better than other ideas. But if you have an idea, your first job is to learn to articulate. And when you get up to the mic, you better be ready, because if you're not, the brothers will eat you a new one. So that's part of that training, that growing friction. I would shout out the late past General President Jim Williams, and shout out the brother who introduced me to Jim Williams as I was a college student, Brigadier General Colonel Charles McGee, one of the last of the Tuskegee Airmen, who was an advisor on the film, who's been featured. He's over 100 years old. Charles McGee was the president of the alumni chapter when I was a college brother sitting in the back row with a fro this big. And he was able to look military man, the first and only black to ever command what used to be Richards Gebar Air Force Base in Kansas City. And he looked through all of that hair and saw something in me as a young man and invited me to go with him to pick up Jim Williams, past General President James R. Williams, the Honorable James R. Williams, when he came to Kansas City to visit as the Midwestern Regional Vice President to have a planning meeting for a regional convention. I met Brother Williams, who then immediately took to me and encouraged me that day to run for higher office in Alpha. He said, he said a whole lot of laudatory things. I shout out to my mentor, Milton Davis. Because of Milton Davis, Milton appointed me to be, I believe I forget the number, but I was his executive director during the last 2 years of his term in office as general president. It was 10 years later that Milton, after I left that office, Milton came to me and said, Darryl, I think it's your time. I think it's time for you to run for general president. My response to him was, Phil, well, Brother Davis, if I'm the last best hope of the fraternity right now, then y'all in bigger trouble than you think you are. Yeah. So a good leader also keeps that perspective, that introspection, and stays deferential because it didn't have to be you. So I'm grateful. I'm thankful to all of the um, brothers that I've met along the way, like yourself. A shout out to Willard Hall. I met Willard in Germany when I was going over there as the executive director, traveling with Milton and his wife to visit the brothers in Germany during their Martin Luther King weekend, which is a big festivity on the bases, the military bases in the European theater. And Willard was the district director over there, and we only knew each other through communication. And I established him as a point of contact to provide better services and products to the brothers over there. And he ended up many years later becoming my campaign manager and my executive director when I was general president. And we had a long conversation yesterday about the good old days. And I know I'm leaving somebody out because I could go on and on. And Bob Willis, brother down here in Georgia, who has been the senior advisor to damn near every living and some of the past general presidents, because Bob is fully transparent. He's a brother who will tell you what he's saying. If you don't want to know what Bob is thinking, don't ask him because he will tell you. And more often than not, he's on point. And again, I can spend another hour just
shout out.
And thank yous. And I thank my family for putting up with me, sharing me with the world, because, I always wonder if you spend enough time with your children. I had 3 boys, and when my oldest son got married, and he has 3 boys now and a puppy. And I remember one day him saying to me, you talk about the things that bring tears to your eyes. Dad, if I could just be a third of the father that you were to me, then I would consider myself a success. Well, I'm looking at him and the time he's spending with his boys, coaching their teams and what have you. I think he's doing a better job than I did. And his wife complains because he's in the gym all the time because he's coaching AAU teams and going around the country and has a reputation of his own in that arena. Has sent several players to college and a couple on to the pros and semi-pros. And in that regard, he is a much better athlete. All 3 of my boys are much better athletes than I ever could have hoped to have been. But I spent many days on the sidelines being a line judge in soccer games and sitting in the stands at football games and basketball games. So a shout out to my family for putting up with me and knowing that they had to share me with the rest of the world or with others. So,
and then also just plugs anywhere where the listeners can follow with you or get connected with you.
Yeah, and a lot of in my info box on LinkedIn, I have a YouTube channel that contains a few of what I consider to be highlight speeches. My inauguration at there's a PBS special about the fraternity. I have a couple of cameo roles in that. But there's several YouTube videos under 30-second general president or past general president. But you'll see the link in my LinkedIn page, my Twitter page, Facebook, Instagram. I am all over social media because I think it's a way to convey the message. And as you said earlier, to convey that image. And I try to always post things that make people think. I don't post things for debate. If I post something and you respond to it, or you say something and I don't respond, don't be offended because I didn't post it there to engage in a debate. I posted it to make you think. I consider myself to be the pen that pricks your consciousness to make you think about, because I find a lot of people just go with the flow. They just go with what they heard, what they're told. We don't really critically think and challenge information we get. That's excellent. What a leader must do always.
That's excellent. I'm going to put the contact information in the show notes for those that want to follow with you, similar to you, super approachable. And just as I said, too, that organic, I was just attracted to the things that you say. So I totally attest to that pricking consciousness. And, I really appreciate you for being on this podcast today, and I really learned so much more. Positive Filter listeners, if you really like this episode, please share it with your family and friends. This is a great message. You can follow Positive Filter on all platforms. And if you want to leave a voicemail for the hotline, it's 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Sharing positivity is a movement. Thank you so much.
Pleasure was mine, Phil. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
So press on, good brother. Onward and upward. Press on.
Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity a Movement. Thanks for listening.